Who the new pope is? Okay. Let's see. We've been Proverbs. It's gone now. It'll be back in a minute. At the screen, that is. We had started chapter 9, and we kind of got halfway through it. So I thought we'd pick up there again and halfway through it again, or maybe through the rest of it. In the book, start of the chapter 9, it has this two women, one called Wisdom and one called. Now, as we know from the previous 8 chapters that we've gone through in the book of Proverbs, that he, being God, has personified wisdom as a woman, and that wisdom has been there with him. Wisdom was the first thing that was created by him, and it was there when he created all that we survey and see now. I think it's in chapter 2 or 3 where wisdom was standing at the gate, and anyone that would pass her way would, if they wanted to, could receive from her the words of life that they would need in order to live a, use the words prosperous life. Okay? But we know that wisdom comes from God and that he abundantly supplies it to anyone who asks thereof, because we have the example of Solomon. When Solomon was to rule God's people, what did he do? He asked God to give him wisdom to rule his people well. And because he had asked for wisdom, God granted him more than just wisdom. So the woman who is called wisdom has built her house on with 7 pillars that make it strong. She has killed an animal for a big meal. She has mixed her wine. She has also prepared her table. She has sent her servants to shout out a message from the highest places in the town. She says to foolish people, "Come here to me." She says to people who do not understand what is right, "Come here and eat my food. Drink the wine that I have mixed. Leave foolish ways so that you may live. Learn to understand what is right so that you can do it." When I'm reading this, I think we all, and I voiced this last week, we all have this within us, this ability to do what is right, but also the ability to do that which is foolish. There's no one who is 100% one or the other. There are those that have more characteristics of one than the other, because later on he's going to talk about that. But in our lives in general, we have to put these things into the perspective of that we are granted both a foolish mind, being a carnal mind, but then we are granted that because we have these books that we call the Bible that we read and that we get information from God to live a better life than we would if we were to live it foolishly. Because I think we can all look around us and see those people around us who are living life foolishly, and you're wondering why they're doing that when they're just causing themselves harm. But they don't seem to think of themselves as causing themselves harm. And like I said, I remember when, and I've never forgotten when I realized I was causing myself the most problems. That if I would just do what was right, 80% of my problems went away. There's another, what, 20% I can't do anything about. But that wasn't because there's just certain things in life you can't do anything about. They're going to happen, And if they do happen, you just deal with it. But make sure you're not the one causing your own injury. It's like that proverbial thing we say, shooting yourself in the foot. Okay. Mhm. Own worst enemy, yes. So these things are, I think, what God's alluding to when he talks about wisdom and when it says, leave foolish ways so that you may live. Because there are a lot of times, I used to watch this TV show, yeah, A Thousand Ways to Die. And they went through the chronicles of things that, the foolish things people did that caused them their death. And, but I'm sure it's never going to stop because there are a lot of times people do things that are just foolish and it can get them killed. I can remember living a life, I thought for the longest somebody was going to kill me because there was this thing I wanted to do and I just did it all the time, no matter what anybody else said. And it could have gotten me killed. Thank God it didn't. But other people aren't so lucky, right? Because we hear it all the time, especially in our day and time, in this drug epidemic. They took one hit and it killed them. Especially with we know that fentanyl is going around, and fentanyl is one of those very powerful drugs that, yes, only do it once and you can die. So there are things that we do in our life that are foolish that can cause us our death or cause us to also be separated from God because those are two different deaths that we were talking about. Because one's a spiritual death and one's a physical death. And adhering to wise things, okay, is what God's talking about. So that one, your days may be longer. Again, it's not a guarantee because the only thing that is guaranteed in life is death itself. One day it will come. But beyond that, when, you don't know. But however, can you live in such a way that you can prolong your life? Well, yes. Okay. So those are the things that I'm thinking about while I'm reading this. And then picturing that here he's using the analogy of a meal. And that meal that is laid out for anybody who wants to come and sit and talk with the words of God. Okay? Because more than one time, you can see throughout the scriptures that God refers to his wisdom, his will, his words as a feast. And that's what's supposed to nourish our soul because we know that somewhere in the scripture it talks about how that my outward man perishes, but my inward man is renewed day by day. But what renews the inward man is the words or the spirit of God, because we know that God said, my words, they are spirit and they are life. Although my outward man may perish, my inward man can be renewed and strengthened by the words in which I live by. Because we all learn to live by something in the course of our life, right? What uh, we all make decisions as to what I'm going to live by. But then at some point, we've all made that decision. Those that are here today made that decision that I'm going to live by the words of God, right? Because they are most wise. I have found them to be most wise because I tried them, they worked, and I'm going to keep doing this. Verse 7 says, if you warn a person who is proud, he will insult you. If you tell a wicked person that he is wrong, he will hurt you. So you don't warn proud people, they will only hate you. If you warn a wise person, he will love you. If you teach a wise person, he will become even more wise. If you teach a righteous person, he will learn whatever you tell him. This one I find a little difficult. Not to say that it's not true. Okay? The difficulty is in if you warn a person who is proud, he will insult you, which I think we talked about this last week. Most of us have experienced this because people have a tendency to retaliate when They feel like they're being attacked. No matter what it is you're telling them, even if you're telling them something for their own good, if they are feeling attacked, they will lash back. Oh, okay. That wasn't for me. I heard something in my ear. All right. And then if you tell a wicked person that he is wrong, he will hurt you. Happens. But if you warn a wise person, he will love you. Again, not to say it's not true, I just find it difficult. If you warn a wise person, he will love you. Anybody experience that? I don't know. That's the question. If you warn a wise person, he will love you. Okay. Hmm. What do you think?
Well, been on both sides. I've been the person who needed to be wrong,
Mhm.
and I lashed out. And I've been a person that has, gave a warning. I just gave them the scriptures to point out that they weren't, that something they weren't supposed to do.
Mhm.
And they lashed out at me.
Just forget it.
I've been on both sides of the fence as well. And things can be perceived. It is very, it's a tightrope that we walk, pretty much, in today's society. Uh, as Sister um, Mosley said, things can be perceived in a wrong way, even though you have good intentions. Um, I think most of us, all of us here, we have good intentions. We try to say something to someone, but it's how it's perceived in their mind. You know, you could say it in the most kindest, loving way, but some people's minds are just poisoned. So, again, if you're intelligent and wise and you've been gifted with that, and the Lord blessed you with that, then you would see the good intentions that somebody has for you. You would see that love and um, again, the intentions of what somebody is trying to warn you or tell you, in love, versus the wicked person that just takes it the wrong way. So again, it's the way it's perceived within that person's mind.
Mhm.
I also want to share that it can also be a communication um, tap. What I mean by that is now the word is true, right? So obviously this word is true. But when we communicate, we should give all the information and details also. So watch this. If, for example, if I come in the room, my wife's already in the room, and I say, why'd you put that there? How is that going to be perceived? Is she going to welcome that or not? Probably not. However, if I add more information to it, if I send over more information, hey dear, why'd you put that there? Because last time it left a stain on the table. Does that make a difference? Sure, it does. Because now she knows I've given her why I'm saying what I'm saying. In the first one, I left it up to her to determine why I'm saying what I'm saying. In the second one, I took control to communicate more effectively why I'm saying what I'm saying. Sometimes we make statements without providing additional information, and you leave it up to the receiver to try to determine what you mean. Then maybe you come back the second time and say why, but that's probably after you gotten a response that you didn't want, right? So in communicating, we have to learn to do it. I always front load my stuff. So I want to give all the whys so you can understand my angle. I don't always do it, but I strive to always do that so that you can know where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to scold you or say you're not doing something. And then that can lead to wisdom. Sometimes we might get the first results not because the person is prideful, but maybe because I didn't form my words properly. I didn't give them a clear thought and understanding from where I'm coming from. They can't be in my mind, they don't know my thoughts. So if I front load it, then I can minimize, right? And hopefully maximize. She said, "Oh, yeah, you know, you're right. Let me go ahead and move that thing. Or can you give me a coaster?" You see what I'm saying? So sometimes it's not just the fact that I said the words, maybe I wasn't clear, and maybe I didn't provide enough information for them to execute wisdom. So I want to say that as well.
Okay. Think thoughts, because communication is always a component of our interactions with one another. And perception. Perception, sometimes you have control over, sometimes you do not. Because sometimes it depends, no matter how you say a thing. It, it depends on where the other person is.
No matter how you say it, how you formulate your words, how it's, you can articulate your words to the best of your ability and clear and precise, and they always snap back with whatever it's already built up in their mind.
Mhm.
I want to say one more thing to that. Remember Martha and Mary. So Wednesday night Bible study,
Mhm.
right? Martha and Mary. You know, Martha thought she was right in her own mind, so much so she went to God on her own behalf. In Martha's mind, Mary was wrong, but in Jesus' mind, Martha was wrong. Sometimes we don't have enough insight that the word of God provides to tell ourselves we're wrong.
Mhm.
So imagine if Martha went to Mary directly. Thank God she went to Jesus. I'm quite sure Martha had gone to Mary on several other occasions. And Mary probably was like, "What are you talking about?" Martha had details and information and everything else. Martha saw herself as right.
Mm.
Mary's thought that she was wrong. And Jesus thought that Martha was wrong. So sometimes we got to look at God to determine. It's not whether a person always has a comeback, it's what are they saying when they come back, right? Now,
Mhm.
what's beautiful between Martha and Jesus is that Martha allowed Jesus to have the final say. But between Martha and Mary, Martha wasn't going to give Mary the final say. So sometimes there are things that work in our own hearts that we never capture, we never lay hold of, we never identify that it's wrong. So that's why things like the situation between Martha and Mary are so profound to me
Mm-hmm.
because it helps me to understand me on a deeper level. Man, am I looking at this thing all wrong? Yeah, I got a lot of insight and information and I'm lining everything up, but could I be wrong? And there are instances, even when I talk to my wife, that she points out angles that I don't see, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I done summed it up,
Right.
right? But when she shares with me information, I recognize, okay, and I relent. I said, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? I didn't see. That wasn't my vantage point, my angle. So we just have to be able to be open, honestly, to see ourselves, not the other person. It's not about the other person. It's actually about us and our own spiritual growth or spiritual immaturity.
Darling.
Say, Sean just actually said that, the key thing that he's saying is that he examined himself and identified the areas that needed, tweaking. But a lot of the people that you deal with in this world today, that part is broken within them. So
Yeah.
they only see other people's faults, but you're trying to say, hey, we're looking at it from this aspect. I only see it from, I'm always right and everybody else is always wrong, but they lack that self-examination.
Mm-hmm.
No, I should apologize. That part is broken.
Yeah. And the last part I want to say is right there in the text that Brother Gaddis, the position. So look at the position of a wise person. 9. If you teach a wise person, he will become even. If you teach a righteous person, he will learn whatever you tell. The individual must always debase themselves. So, me, I love learning, understanding, and I put myself at people's feet. So, I don't go around personally thinking that I know more than people to the point where I don't listen to people. Like, I don't do that. What I do is I listen. I think a good skill I have is I listen. I understand when people are saying whatever it is that they're saying. So I listen because I listen to learn. That's why I listen because I don't like being wrong. And so if I don't want to be wrong, I have to listen to learn how to be right or wise, right? And that's my position in life. That's where I put myself. I tell my wife all the time, when my father-in-law was alive, I said, you know what? He's smarter than me. And he was. When it comes to Bible, he was. Especially when I first started preaching. But you know what I did? I never went back and forth. It was years before I like added in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. When we first started, oh, I was just listening intently and learning and understanding because I know I'm not on the same level and I didn't want to open my mouth and let it be known, right? Sometimes that's what we do, but it's our responsibility to put ourselves in that position. And whenever it is that we think we're on somebody else's level, sometimes we open our mouth and show that we're not. So you have got to cultivate a desire to want to be wise. And wise people, listen, that's what it said right there in 9. If you teach, that means a wise person is teachable. So are you a teachable person? Because if you're not a teachable person, I guarantee you're not as wise as you think, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
wise people are in a position sitting at somebody's feet to always learn. That's why I always thank the brothers, the sisters who make beautiful comments to help broaden my own mind, even in a study like this. I always tell Sister McClary, thank you for sharing it. To me, it's like something about the way she shares, like her information that really helps me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what it is, but I told her that last Sunday. Why? Because I'm always listening to learn. I don't know. And that's how I grow. Somebody give me a tidbit. Oh, wow. And it's like an explosion in my mind. And then I'm linking stuff. but I humble myself to know that other people probably know more, just as much or more than I do.
All right, I got to absorb most of that. And wonder, am I a wise person? From what I just read and what's written there, and we talked about life and interacting with people, and then turn back and look at myself, am I a wise person? No, granted, that is a self-evaluation because, of course, if I listen to the external, that's also going to confirm whether what I'm thinking is matching or not. Because sometimes people can think you're a fool and you're not really. Because sometimes they think what you're saying is foolish. Remember, a lot of people thought what Jesus was saying was foolish. What is this foolishness he's talking about? Eat his flesh, drink his blood. Please. But it wasn't foolishness because it came from above. So therefore, that discernment to come in there somewhere. In my own mind, what am I discerning? What am I learning? What am I comparing it against? So can I learn? Or have I gotten to the point that I don't learn anymore? Because oh, I've heard this already. You ain't had nothing new. You know how many times I've heard this? Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, all right, all right. Those are kind of some things that sum up inside this goes on in the head. Yeah. Nobody hears it. That's what's going on up here. Okay. Yeah, he's going to say this. He's going to say this. But is that being wise? Even a child can say something as innocent as they are that can be profound and a teaching moment to someone else. Yes, ma'am. Easy reading. You'd find it on Bible.com if you were to look for it. Yeah, they look different. Does it? If you want to be wise in the way that you live, first you must respect the Lord with fear. If you know God, the Holy One, you will understand what is right. So many people say, I know God. Now, in this translation, it goes a little bit further for the clarification, the Holy One. Just in case there is some other God out there. Because like I said, I've run into people that will tell me, or have told me, I can get wisdom anywhere. There's a whole lot of places to get wisdom. And it ain't in the book that you're reading. I told them I understand. And there is a whole lot of places that will give you all kind of wisdom. Because if you remember in the movie Doctor Strange, he went in search of and he found a lot of wisdom. Okay. And found a wise person. But then again, their wisdom is limited. The wisdom that comes from the Holy One is unlimited. So if you want to be a wise person, you must first respect the Lord with fear. But we know this is a repeated statement throughout the scriptures because the beginning of wisdom, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Why? Why is fear of the Lord the beginning of wisdom? And when we say fear, I'm saying respect. This is Mother's Day for this country. And can you tell when a child respects their parent? Because you can listen to the way they talk to their parent, whether they respect them or not, right? Because if they talk to their parent, then must they talk down to their parent, then they don't respect their parent in enough regard to do or even to comply with what they're telling them to do. Because if we respect God, then we're going to do what he says to do, right? So that is the beginning of receiving wisdom, because then that puts us in that debased state of learning to be at the feet of the Lord, to receive what he has to say. And I'm not going to say not without question, because we can question God. It happens throughout the scriptures where he has shown us those who have questioned him. But it still has to be a respectful question. Okay? Because Gideon tested the Lord because he wanted to know if he was true or not. But God knew from his questioning and from his heart, because God is the only one who can see everyone's heart and motive and intent. And so if our motive and intents are pure, as Gideon's were, God entertains a question. But then when your motives are not pure, God knows. And he will act accordingly. So now if I am going to receive the wisdom that God has prepared for everyone who seeks after him, that he will supply, it must begin with me respecting who he is in this world. And then I can receive what he has ready for all those, so that I may live a life that is pleasing and acceptable before him. And it is a gradual and time-laden process to move from where we begin to where we can end up in our lives. And in that process of time, as we sit and we learn, as we continue to add to our precepts and knowledge of him, we'll grow and then live a more prosperous life than we would have without him. Okay?
It's exactly what you're saying. It's when you fear God, when you fear the Lord, put him first. The picture of sitting at his feet is you also put yourself last or at the bottom. So when it comes to entreating people, the pattern that we learn between us and God is God is first, seek ye first.
Mm-hmm.
Then I sit at his feet, which puts me below him. So then how do we interact with one another? When you go back to the, verse 7 and 8 about when you take the word to a proud person, where does the proud person put themselves? Like that's the person that you can't tell them anything.
Mm-hmm.
So where do they put themselves? Right? They put themselves higher than everybody else. That's why they don't listen. That's why you can't tell them anything. They can be wrong and never see they're wrong. Because in their own mind, they always see that they're right. And so that proud person does not put themselves in the proper position.
Mm-hmm.
And I share this as well. When I'm interacting with people again, I put myself at their feet. Sitting at the feet is the servant perspective, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all I want to do is serve however it is that I can serve someone, right? Great. I have a skill set. My skill set that God has given me is only meant to serve. I
Correct.
serve him,
Mm-hmm.
and then I serve brothers and sisters. That's all it's meant. It's not for me to be proud and for me to be proud or be puffed up or I know more.
That's what Paul was talking about in his writings,
Have got to position ourselves properly, and nobody can put you there. We have to make a choice to put ourselves there. And when we do it, then you're in a position to receive the abundance of life, just like you said.
Verse 11, wisdom will add more days and years to your life. If you are wise, it will help you in many ways. But if you think you do not need wisdom, you will bring trouble on yourself. So I'm gonna pause there. And I wanted to revisit this and go a little bit further with, this thinking, this thought pattern that God has set out there for us to contemplate about wisdom and where are we getting it from and how are we utilizing it, what it can do for us, but not us only, but all those that are around us. Remember, the word is true, and he says, wisdom will add more days to your and years to your life. Okay? And when you use godly wisdom to conduct your life, you will find it to be pleasant. Okay? Got 30 seconds left. I'm going to run down this path. I'm going to share something with you. Okay. So I do tech work. Okay. I'm a programmer now. And earlier this year, I was working on a project with someone who I'm going to say I brought into the business. When I met him, he was trying to do what I was doing. And at the time he met me, I had plenty of work that God had blessed me with. So I started giving it to him so that he can get his company going on the same type of work. And God blessed him to have and get clients too. So we're running along doing the same things. And then this year, he came back to me and said that he wanted me to do some work for him, which I thought, okay, fine. Now, I had told him I was apprehensive because in the 2.5 years I've known him, he hasn't really paid me very much for all that I've done for him. I've never brought it up to him, just that one time it's like, I don't think it'd be wise to keep putting myself out there and not being compensated for what I'm providing to you. Not for everything, but just for if I'm doing work as a laborer, it's time now that you should be paying me as a laborer. And we squabbled about that a little bit, but I squashed it, let it go. And I did the work for him. And it come up to $1,600 worth of work. Well, come time to pay me, he says no, because the client wasn't going to pay him. I was like, but that's not my problem. That has nothing to do with me. That's your client. I did the work's completed. Okay. So I still send him the invoice. He still refused to pay it or talk to me. Oh, by the way, this is a brother in Christ too. Yeah. Okay. So I have really not said anything else to him. I just continue to send the invoices because I know in the past, there's this one client that I sent an invoice to for 2 years and then he finally paid it. But that was just being persistent and doing what I'm supposed to. Just kept saying I didn't squabble about it. But now this one, I'm gonna tell you how God handled this one. In that the past Monday, we got a call and we took the call. We had the meeting with the client or the potential client, and he was explaining his situation. And then he asked us, "Do you know MedSolve?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." But that's all I said. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. And he says he wanted to leave them because they weren't getting the service that they wanted. And they want to see if we could provide the service that they were looking for. I'm going like, okay. So don't know how they found me, okay? But God has taken one of his clients and brought him to me. Now, if this client comes on board, that client will pay me way more than the $1,600 that Top owes me. Interesting, isn't it? Go on. Closing word of prayer.
Pray. Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for your grace and your mercy, for your love and your kindness, allowing us to be able to come together to study a portion of the word. Thank you for blessing Brother Gaddis with knowledge and wisdom to impart unto us. Bless him to continue to study that he might grow thereby. Bless our hearts to always remain open to your teachings. Bless us to sit at your feet constantly. Bless us to put you first and keep you first. Bless us throughout the remainder of these services. Bless those who are en route. In Jesus.
Amen.